Welcome back to TEYARA SMP, a TNP Limitless 7 series, and I've been working on a couple of things since the last episode, one of which is we have added some wiring to the exterior of the house, and in fact I've added some wiring to the top of the large capacitor that we have there, but this one goes out to the east. Part of it travels down the house to a line that we're eventually going to put in, and there's going to be like a powered drawbridge somewhere over here. Then there's going to be another line out the front to another drawbridge right around here, and then another line that goes down that way that'll power another drawbridge way down at the end, and a bunch of other buildings that I plan on putting in the town here. But you'll also notice that I've got a line running up the exterior of the house and into the attic, where I have previously stated we are going to get into applied energistics, or I should say that I've already started getting into applied energistics, and that is so that we can begin work on getting back to my home dimension. I actually started with this stuff over here. So we have an MV accumulator, which is just serving as an additional power buffer. And originally I had an immersive engineering coil come over to the power acceptor, which was a full block form at the time. And on top of that, I had an inscriber and the charger. And these are basically the machines that you're going to need to start immersive engineering. You need this for the charged Certus quartz, and also the compass to find meteorites. And you can also use it to get the guidebook. Now in TNP Limitless 7, we have the eccentric tome, which contains this as a guidebook. And also, if we come into JEI and we find just about anything from AE2, much like Create, it also has its own ponder, where we can press G and it'll bring up the guide, well, here, basically. It's very convenient. So, you need the charger to charge stuff, you need the inscriber to make more chip components, and you also need to find it's not a chest anymore, but there's like something that you find inside the Applied Energistics meteors that you find around the world. And that is what gets you the initial inscribing presses, but then after that you can make more. You can see we've got a whole bunch of stuff in our inventory, but let's just talk about what we already have first. So I've just been using this barrel as my initial storage. It's kind of sad, but let's take a look. We have a storage bus. Now the storage bus is basically your input-output for other storage solutions in Applied Energistics. In this case it's just a barrel, but we're going to expand upon that down here, and I just realized that now I've technically got an extra storage bus here because I've made all of the other ones that I need and I've already put them down. Oh well, I guess we can use that to add more storage in the future or something like that. But, so I made that, and we also had the terminals over there. They were over here attached to this smart cable. Now, Applied Energistics has its own cabling set. Smart cables in particular, they tell you the number of channels in use, and that's very important. Each of these devices on the sides of things consume channels. And you basically need to manage your channels. A network can only have up to 8 channels unless you have a controller attached to it, if memory serves, at which point you can have up to 32 channels per face on that controller. Now, we are just using a single controller block here, so that means that we've got 32 going out the top and out the sides here, and then we're just wasting a couple of faces because, let's face it, this is kind of overkill for a little attic, but this is really expandable. You can do a lot of cool stuff with this, including like P2P, subnetting, and we even do a little bit of that in this room so far. So let me also take out the network tool. The network tool is a cool thing that lets you see through facades, and facades are things that let you hide your wires behind other blocks that you actually want them to look like. So in this case, we're just using sealed planks, because that's what was originally here as the support structure for the roof. So you can see as we just come on down, we are using 3 channels over here. If we come across to the other side, we have our energy cells, and in fact, I have made one of these dense energy cells, so let's go ahead and put that in the top for now. And that's gonna potentially mess with some stuff. It looks like we're fine. This is just charging back up. Now you'll notice up at the top, it is reading in FE, which is forge energy, of course. If we come back over to the controller, the default state is AE, which is its own internal units. 1 AE is 2 FE, so AE is worth more. But you can toggle this over here to convert your network into displaying FE. And I'm kind of wondering if that's on the client side kind of thing. So if I were to look at somebody else's Applied Energistics network, it would also display in FE even if they have theirs set to AE. That's how I would implement it if I was writing the mod, but I'm not writing the mod, so don't quote me on any of this. But then next to it, we have another smart cable coming out to the side, and here is an interesting property. Applied Energistics blocks like this, they pass channels through them. So we have just a smart cable coming out of the side here to this Energy P2P tunnel. And that is being fed by this Energy P2P tunnel here. P2P means peer-to-peer. So that means that we can pass through stuff through these channels. Now in this case, we're simply using it to pass energy through. This means that we'll be able to put devices here from other mods that accept power. And then next to it, we have these pattern providers. And depending upon, I think it's a processing pattern, if we put processing patterns in here, then the devices we add here will be able to process recipes when we get into autocrafting, which we're going to do in a little bit, theoretically. So that's everything down this end. Moving on a little bit more, we have one more setup where we've got some pattern providers and P2P tunnels. And that's where we're going to put in some more thermal stuff, I think. And then this is the storage section. It doesn't look like a whole lot, but we are going to be putting in a, I want to say it's a, where is it? The ME chest, and we're going to be using that to help us defragment our disks down the road. Down here, we are going to have the armory, and actually I can be putting these down because I have them all in my inventory. So here is where we're going to be putting our ME chest. This right here, technically speaking, should count as being on its own subnet, theoretically, because, and let me just go ahead and try putting something in here, right? Okay, so the disk is on. That does seem to indicate that it's using power. But when I say it's on its own subnet, Applied Energistics also, when you have up to 8 devices connected without a controller, can be its own subnet. A subnet is a network that isn't connected to your main network. So, although it looks like it is, we have a quartz fiber here, and that's just providing power to this ME chest from over here. Then, you know what? I don't like that thunder. Let's go ahead and sleep, even though we have a comfortable bed downstairs. So, this quartz fiber means that we're just passing power through this end here. And then, because we have this import bus over here, that means that this isn't actually connected to the network. Not really. Now, if we had a disk that was actually full of something, and I'm not going to put either of these in here because that would probably do very bad things to my network, but if we had a disk that was actually full of something, then what it would do is it would start to theoretically take out of this ME chest, or take out of the disk in the ME chest, and then it would insert it into the system, because this is an import bus. It imports from this into our network. And that is also why we're getting a channel on this smart cable from here, but we are not getting an additional one from this chest, I don't think. Yes. So if we take a look here, we also have the pattern provider and storage bus down here. This is going to be for the armory from... Did I put that away? Storage controller, circuit slicer. I definitely have an armory somewhere. I'm just either blind or I've put it in our initial storage. Magma Crucible, nope, we're using that later. Now we're going to get to see one of the interesting features of Applied Energistics. What? Oh, I never finished making it. Okay, I'm gonna go get some stone real quick. But what you saw just there is that I typed into, I forget if I typed up here or down here, but JEI synchronizes with the AE2 search. Sometimes this will lag just a little bit behind this or whatever, but the point is, when you want to filter on stuff, we can do at AE2, for example, and it will just bring up the list of Applied Energistics 2 things that you can have in here. And that's really freaking cool. So I'm going to go get that stone, and we're going to keep going through what I intend to do with this network. And now we're going to get to see another cool feature of Applied Energistics, crafting. This isn't exactly the neat part just yet. We are going to be getting into autocrafting very shortly, hopefully. But we have taken items out of our terminal, despite the fact that it's not being displayed right now. But we've grabbed all of our spruce drawers and stuff, we've grabbed our stone, our redstone comparator, and the netherite, and we can now just make an armory cabinet like that. It fully integrates with JEI, very nice. We're going to put our armory cabinet down here, and what that allows us to do is that if we have any random equipment, we can store up to, I want to say it's 4096 by default, in this armory cabinet, and it explicitly requires a storage mod like this, or, what's the other one? No, not dynamics. Oh yeah, maybe it is dynamics. Yeah. So either like this or refined storage or integrated dynamics, it requires some kind of mod to view what's inside of the armory cabinet. So this is meant to augment something like this. And so that's what we have our storage bus here to do. Now, another thing to talk about before we get into all the rest of this stuff is storage bus priority. If we take a look at the priority, this is at 11. And so that means that when we are putting armor and other tools and stuff that are equipment that have like unique NBT data, that's going to go here into the armory cabinet first. As long as I've set everything up correctly and I understand how disks work too, that's just what's going to happen. We can come over here and start dumping stuff into it. Theoretically, I want to put an import somewhere. And I think there might be like packing type in this pack so that we can just pick up barrels and stuff and bring them here so we can unload stuff and like start putting them into the system. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Here we have a whole bunch of terminals. So we've got the ME terminal. This is just a list of all of your items. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing particularly special. We can put in some upgrades here. We'll get to that when we get to that. This is the crafting terminal, as you already saw. It's basically the ME terminal, but it's better because we have the crafting part as well. And I've already seen, where's that crafting thing? So we've already made a couple of patterns. I've already made one to theoretically charge up the AE2 guidebook, and I might test it a little bit later, but we haven't put in our crafting processors yet, and I also don't have any books here. So I don't think it'll do anything if I click on this, but I want to anyway. Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. You can see that we don't have the book, so it tells us that, and it also tells us no crafting CPUs are available. Partial plan, missing ingredients. So that means that yes, we aren't quite ready for auto crafting just yet, but the system helpfully tells us that. Next to that is the pattern encoding terminal, and we've got some blank patterns here, and, well, depending upon what you're doing, you put your ingredients on the left side, you put the outputs on the right side, and you ensure that you're on the relevant pattern. Now, for most machines, or for most modded machines specifically, you're going to want processing patterns, and even so this could apply to if you want to export to a create machine in order to process your stuff. As long as you get the ingredients and the quantity correct on the right-hand side, this is basically what you're going to be using for the most part. You can also do crafting patterns, which requires you to have like a vanilla recipe over here. Like it's what would happen if you made it in a crafting bench. They have added, since the last time I did anything with this, which is to say I've mostly just played with other people's AE2 networks and never made my own, We have smithing table patterns, that's definitely new, so we can upgrade stuff in here. And then we have stone cutting patterns, which it's only the vanilla stone cutter. So anything that's been added to that kind of stone cutting recipe we can do here, but we can't do like framed blocks. We can't do some of the more decorative things, but say if we wanted like cobblestone, you can see that we've got all of the cobblestone recipes, including the modded stuff like Macaw's roofs. But we don't actually want to do anything with that right now, so we're just going to leave this as is. You'll also see that when I hover over JEI, the slots turn green, so we can even make patterns for things that we don't have yet, and that's how we made things like the guide, which, despite having it in the eccentric tombstone, tombstone? It's tome. Eccentric tome. Tombstone is Final Fantasy XIV, I gotta stop saying that. But despite not actually having the guide with us, we could still make that recipe. So that's what you're going to be doing with the pattern encoding terminal. Then we have the pattern access terminal, which tells you all of the patterns that are hooked up to various devices. And very helpfully, if it's hooked up to an actual thing, then it will display what it is and also the name. You can also rename the device that it is in, that is to say these pattern providers, and it will tell you which of the pattern providers it's in. This is very useful for when you have a lot of pattern providers in your network and you want to single out which one specifically you're talking to. But right now we don't have any use for that. That's for much bigger networks. Down here we are going to put in our ME drives, which is what allows you to put disks into the system. And if you take a look behind here, you may have noticed that lights on these channels were starting to turn on. So here, this dense smart cable has completely maxed out. That means that if I were to try to add another device to this cable, it would stop working. I don't know if it would just cut off a channel to that device in particular, or if it would cut off the device that is furthest away from the main root or whatever of the tree. But the TLDR is these small cables can only have up to 8 channels on them. The reason that we're going with the smart cables is because it has the visualization aspect. And these can also be dyed any of the 16 colors if you don't want them to connect to each other. But for now, our system is small enough that we can just do one smart cable. We don't have to worry about cable colors just yet. Yes. But while we're in here, we have a couple of special drives from Extended AE, and these allow us to provide infinite cobblestone and infinite water. And then below that, we have some rewards that I got earlier. I think I put the water on the right, so let's just keep with that format. Let's put the fluid on the right for this one. And we've got a 1K ME item storage cell on the left here. And now, if we take a look, you can see that those drive slots are starting to fill up. And in fact, they even resemble the model. That's really cool. I didn't know that happened. Now, quick aside, although I talk about this like I'm very experienced with applied energistics and stepping out of the narrative for 5 seconds, this is my first actual applied energistics network. I've not done anything with this before except for theory crafting. And the fact that this is all just working really pleases me, I gotta say. But let's step back into things. So we have all of our drives here. Over here, we have a ton of storage buses. Now, the 8 that we have here, we're just going to surround with spruce netherite barrels. But if we take a look at the storage buses real quick, this one has priority 8. So, if you remember, this is 11. That means that any armor and equipment and stuff is going to theoretically go into here first. Then, this is number 8. So where are 10 and 9? 10 is over here, I think. Let me double check. No, this is 9. So 10 is up here. And this is eventually going to be a storage drawers controller. I mean, a functional storage controller. And this is going to be a controller access point for functional storage. Now the thing is, at the maximum upgrade for functional storage, I realized that they have a radius, a block radius of 44 blocks, if I've calculated that correctly. So what that means is I can have a storage controller up here, and that'll cover most of the house. We don't even need the full 44 to do that. We can use a lesser tier of upgrade in order to surround the entire house with a storage controller field, more or less, and then we can put storage in the rest of the house and just hook it up to this system, theoretically, if I'm understanding everything correctly. Then, at the bottom, we're going to have a controller access point, because what I intend to do, originally, I was going to have my mystical agriculture, building, probably some kind of a greenhousey type thing, next to my pot over on the other side of town. However, I've thought better of it, or realized that if I build my mystical agriculture building over in this general direction, then this will be within 44 blocks of that controller, and after upgrading it to the maximum possible netherite tier, it will be in range of this controller access point. So we can have our mystical agriculture set up down there, and then still benefit from it up here, and then have additional storage throughout the house via the controller up here. And that's going to be really cool when we get into it. But for now, this is just dead weight, and in fact, it's not even connected to the network yet. But we're going to get to that really shortly. Let's just put down our barrels first, and the question is, do I want them with the faces facing the outside? I think the answer is yes. I think we want to do it like this. And then, we're going to come over here, and we are going to add 2 of these stack upgrades. Now, I don't know what the maximum number of stack upgrades is in these barrels. I know you can't just use every single slot for them, but we are immediately jumping up to the maximum stack size for these netherite barrels. And I think these might technically be better storage than the disk drives, or that is to say, they are better than individual disks, but the fact that each disk drive can hold up to 10 disks, and that's just in base AE. There are other mods that add expanded drive bays, which hold up to, I think, 20 drives. So you can get really big with your applied Energistics settings, and just hold a lot of stuff in here. But this will also help us out. I've set it up such that we're going to start filling this barrel first, then this one, then this one, then this one, etc., all the way until finally this one is full, and then we're going to theoretically start filling up these ME drives with stuff. And we've got plenty of bays, probably more than we're ever going to need down here, but ain't no kill like overkill, I guess. Let's see. Yes. So the next bay here is where we're going to put in our autocrafters. And we've got a whole bunch of these blocks that are going to form their own kind of multi-block structures. Now, let's talk about them real quick. The crafting co-processing unit allows recipes to access, their processing things faster. It, outputs more items to, pattern providers and, the ones down there and stuff, so that theoretically this makes it faster. And in fact, what we're going to see when we get to the molecular assemblers is that if we didn't have these in our CPUs, then it would just do I think up to 3 molecular assemblers at one crafting job, and that would just be really slow. So, just to be cautious, we are going to put this in like this, and then we are going to put in, let's see, we're going to put in a crafting monitor here, and then we're going to put in a crafting storage here, and voila, this has become a crafting CPU. And apparently 4 might be the bare minimum. I didn't even realize it. Or maybe you need a monitor or crafting storage. That's probably what it is. I think you need at least 1 crafting storage block. And this is what allows you to autocraft. The crafting monitor just tells you what's currently crafting on this screen, and if we right click and there's a job running, it will go into the entire tree of the craft that you're currently running. The 4K crafting storage is what allows it to have an internal storage buffer of up to, I don't know if it's a literal 4,000 or if it's like 4096, you know, power of 2 kind of thing, and they're just doing the rounding that most computations do. So we skipped right on past the 1K crafting storage, straight to 4. I just thought that was going to be a little bit easier to get into. We can always upgrade this later. But pretty much as long as you have a valid rectangle of all of these crafting blocks, and there is even, if we just real quick, A2 crafting, you can see the various sizes here. It goes all the way up to 256 in basic applied energistics, but there are naturally AE additions, which takes that all the way up to 65,536K, which is just ridiculous. And then we also have this base crafting unit, which doesn't actually do anything, I don't think. Let me just open the guide real quick to confirm that. Each crafting CPU handles one requester job. Well, yeah, because it's the multi-block there. CPU, Crafting unit simply fills space in a CPU in order to make it build a solid rectangular prism if you don't have enough of the other components. They're also a base ingredient in the other components. Yes, so this, like, they don't actually do anything by themselves, they just make it so that you can finish your rectangle more cheaply. Or, you know, upgrade them later to finish out your rectangle more expensively. We're just going to mirror that setup on the other side, so we have a second crafting device over here, and that should, yes, also be passing channels through to the other side. So you can see that these storage buses, which we're eventually going to put our functional storage in, have now lit up. We now have those channels being occupied by these storage buses. And I know what you're thinking, well, that's kind of weird. Why would you have the wire coming out the side here and just kind of going into thin air? Ah, yes. We also have the requester terminal, which I have here. So the requester is an item added by a mod? Wait, this isn't how I wanted this to be. Thinking about this really quickly. You should also be taking up channels. You are taking up channels, yes. And I think I actually want to move this one back. Yeah, I want to move this one back. So let's take our networking tool real quick. Now, this has become disconnected from the network because this is just a cable anchor. It's just preventing this smart cable from connecting to the crafting monitor for reasons. But then if we put the requester down here, yep, that's just lit back up. This has more channels. And if we come over here, yep, we're using 3 of 32 channels on this dense cable. And again, this CPU can only take, or it takes up 1 channel because it's a multi-block. And it can only pass through up to 7 channels, including these 2. So the next thing that I'm about to do may potentially get really funky, but we are going to put in a wall of pattern providers and molecular assemblers. Now these things are just the bee's knees. If we put them down, this is how we get auto-crafting with all of those crafting recipes. And you can see that when I put them down, they started glowing, which means they're online, I suppose. And theoretically, if I just... You should also be connected. How many channels are we at? 5 of 32? Yes. So each of these pattern providers that we put down are currently being routed through the requester, through the CPU, into our dense smart cable. So that's why that's counting up. But that's also, again, very important that we don't hit our limit. So I'm also going to mirror that process on the other side. And then, let's see, I need to put one here, and then, let's see, my pattern is going to be one here, one like that, one like this, and then bam, 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 and bam. And if I've done this correctly, okay, so we only have 4 routed out that side, that's good. How many do we have over here? We have 3 routed out this side. So that means that just this one, and I think maybe 2 of the ones over here, or maybe 1 of the ones over here, has routed through there, but then the rest should be going through the ceiling. Yes, which it is. We've got 5 of these pattern providers hooked up through the dense cable in the ceiling. And, yes, I knew I was missing something. Boom. So now we have a very ugly looking, yet very functional, wall of pattern providers and molecular assemblers. Now, the neat thing about the way that we are doing these pattern providers is because they are full block, they provide their recipes to the adjacent molecular assemblers, which means that density-wise, this one is the most powerful one, or the one that we want to put the jobs that we're going to be doing, I guess, most frequently, potentially, because we'll then have access to all 4 of these assemblers. But the other thing is, when we go through this, we can effectively structure our crafting in a way that pipelines it. That means to say, as we complete earlier steps in crafting, say you want to make a wooden pickaxe, for example, you need, well, wood. So you'd put logs into your system, and then you need to make planks from those logs. You might put that in the pattern buffer over there. So then you've got these two potentially making logs into planks. Then you need planks into sticks, at least if you're doing it the completely vanilla crafting way. So you might put planks into sticks in this pattern buffer over here. So then you've got these two converting planks into sticks, while this is also converting logs into planks. And then you need those planks and sticks into your pickaxes. So if you're bulk crafting wooden pickaxes for some reason, you might put that recipe in the middle here, where you've got all of your previous crafting steps being provided as inputs into these. Anyway, at this point I'm blathering, and I also feel like I really should have named all of these pattern providers, so I'm probably going to do that sometime before next week off camera, so that we can more easily address where we're putting our buffers in. But now we should be autocraft worthy, and the best way that we can test that is if we come over here to our charger, and this will also test that my theory works for the charger. But as you can see, we've got the pattern provider over here. We've got a pattern for Certus quartz into charged Certus quartz. We also have the compass into meteorite compass, and of course, book into guide. And so, if I come back over to my crafting terminal and take out the charged quartz, we should be able to click on this, and let's make, actually, I probably should have figured out how many I have to work with here. Oh, more than enough. So let's go ahead and set this up for a fairly big number, because you do use charged quartz for quite a bit in the mod. So let's go ahead and just make a full stack. You can see to craft 64, available 64, crafting CPU automatic. So that means that it will pick whichever one is free. Let's go ahead and start that. And so this one has taken up the job. It now has it on the screen. And if I've done this correctly, I think I might have, maybe not. I don't know if I have. This is not importing correctly. Okay, so I think I might need to do some shenanigans. I might need to do some shenanigans in order to make this work 100% correctly. And so, like I said, this right here is technically a subnetwork, and if I take out my routing tool or whatever, the network tool, you can see that we've got a quartz fiber that's powering this charger and also the inscriber, and we have our pattern provider going directly into the charger. But the problem is, I think what we need is a pattern provider going into a temporary storage buffer such as spruce netherite barrel, and then routing the relevant thing into the relevant device, and then exporting that back into the system where it's then picked up by the pattern provider as an output. I need to debug this a little bit, but the theory is kind of solid. I just needed to bake it just a little bit more. But the point is, you can use this to automate a bunch of stuff. I've just done it wrong. I think for next week I might do a little bit on getting the thermal expansion stuff up in here, because those I believe do actually work more like the way I'm expecting them to. For one thing, you can set the input and output to face the pattern provider, and so that's going to count as having being put back into the system. You see it's got this return inventory here, and that's the main problem with the current setup. Unfortunately, I have also tested facades with the stripped dark oak log, and the problem is you can't rotate the orientation. So if I put them down, you're just going to see the face of the log here and on the bottom, and it'll be way more visible on the bottom than up here because the bottom is the ceiling. So yeah, I need to refactor this a little bit. That's kind of unfortunate, but hey, we're learning. This is fine. It's still not bad for a first foray into the system. Let me also open this up real quick because, yes, you can see that we do have our infinite amounts of water, and we should also have our infinite amounts of cobble, which we do, and we're going to be able to do some really cool stuff with that as well. But I think that's going to do it for today. I need to make sure I don't punch something important. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified. And as always, I'm looking forward to your feedback in the comments below. And with that, I will catch you on the flip side. Thanks for watching, everybody. In the upper left is the next episode, or a video you might like. In the lower left is the series playlist, and on the right is my icon, by which you can subscribe. Thanks again for watching.